Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. Christmas 2022 has been and gone. The presents opened and too much eating and drinking gone on, I'm sure. And you're probably counting down the days to the salmon season starting or getting back out into the water before the hectic work-life schedule starts all over again. So for our last episode of the year, we've put together a collection of our guests' most memorable fish on the fly stories. With everything from small fish to giant fish, fishing with family and friends, they give us a snapshot of just why we all like to fly fish. And Tom, before we hear from our guests, how was your Christmas and what's your plans for 2023?
Man, Tara, hi, happy Christmas to you.
Happy Christmas.
Well, happy New Year, you should be saying now, I suppose. But anyway, look, very much the same as I suppose everybody else. Ate too much, way too much, partook it too much. And, I'll pay the price in January. But, until then, listen, enjoy it where we can. It's nice to have the year. It's fairly quiet on my side here in Pernamona. How was yours?
Grad, 3 kids, Santi came, that keeps us busy. I think I said this before, I like to buy myself fly fishing presents and then I get my wife to wrap them and hand them to me on Christmas morning. Oh my God, it's such a surprise. Thanks a million. What a great present. I got for myself Matt Harris's Fish of a Lifetime. Have you seen that book?
Cool. Yeah.
Bloody expensive. But big coffee table type book, incredible production because he's a photographer, fanatical salmon angler. So I've spent my time kind of delving into that.
It's not a lot of photos in it, is it?
A lot of photos, but there's good stories in it as well.
Class.
And I like kind of doing that. It's just that kind of my treat to myself over Christmas. I'll be bringing the kids out fishing to Adair Springs. So fingers crossed on the weather. Next few days I'm going to bring them out. And looking forward to what I don't know about you, Tom, but I'm kind of, I get the impression you're kind of every evening sitting by the fire out with the fly tying desk, whipping up a few flies, when you're not fly fishing, you're thinking about fly.
All the time. Oh yeah, let everybody believe that. I still haven't got around to tying flies yet. And every winter can be different. As I think we said that before on one of the podcasts. Whereas like last year, I think by the end of October, I had 100 dabblers done. And then I rejigged my buzzer box. I got 320 buzzers tied.
Respect.
Sorry, 280. And I did, 280 buzzers tied. And I kept 40 from my old box. I cleared out the whole box. And my new box, 320. So that last year I was perfect. This year I have nothing.
What the hell have you been doing with your time?
Yeah, New Year's resolution. Oh,
Netflix.
Netflix and social media. Yeah, it's my New Year's resolution.
It's the time
more flies and less time wasted in front of the phone.
Unless you're listening to a podcast, of course.
Of course. Well, that you see now. Here's the thing. Are you guys out there? You can tie flies and listen to podcasts. Remember that?
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Or you can watch Peter Driver as well.
Yep. Yeah, true.
But it's fun. And have you you don't get out fishing at all? Will you?
No, I won't do anything. Our fly tying club is probably going. We've fly tying Pernamona anglers have a fly tying class, and we hope at the end of January to do a day out on leash angling. Yes. That's what we're hoping to do, and then of course we're in the middle of February, so look forward to that.
Actually, won't be long coming. Of course, salmon season starting next week.
Yeah.
Hopefully speak to Shane Gallagher and the Drows, just get an update from the Drows in January for the first episode. Yeah. I'm already planning now the kind of trips and thinking, this is what I like doing this kind of time of year. Is it's kind of sitting there going, right, okay, January, when I get to the Drows, February, Blackwater starts, Carb opens, might even get up there, Tom. We can do an episode up there.
Yeah. We were meant to do one last year.
Yeah, so...
And it didn't have transpired. This year is definitely, but you know what we said, as everybody knows, and we still have to get a proper term for it. Our small bucket list.
Yes, the small B bucket list.
The small B bucket list. So now is the time to get it all sorted, Dara. Put it down to get those places you haven't been to.
Exactly.
I've never fished the Moy.
Actually, there we go. We should make a trip up.
Yeah, now.
Because I've never fished. Actually, whatever excuse a dub like me has for not fishing the Moy, you're on the bloody Mayo border.
I am. It's still an hour and a half, though. Oh. I have to pass a lot of places.
So you drive that to get milk down there, you know what I mean?
Go down to the shop.
I'll be back in 3 hours.
There's the dub coming out in you now.
I know. See, I've been hanging out with the Dubs over Christmas, you know.
That's it. You see, yeah.
To get me back down to Tipperary, like.
Yeah, they're trying to claw you back. So there.
It's like my wife says when I meet up with family and friends again, the accent comes out again, like, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, how's it going? But come here. I tell you what, this is an interesting episode for people. I think it's a nice time of year to be doing it. In terms of, and it's actually, we introduced it kind of. I think, well, Stan McCart was the first one. And we've made it a point now of every time of asking, the last question is, what's the most memorable fly? And in fairness, we give the guests heads up as well that we're going to ask it, so they're not on the spot. But I think for you, Tom, what do you think? Like, for these stories, it was really it was such a wide range of kind of different stories, wasn't it?
Isn't it? Actually, you said, like, when we started, we didn't really know. We thought it was going to be, initially, I think, kind of thought, like most things, it would be the biggest fish. But, you get such a wide range, and we're talking about this. Like, there's a couple of quite poignant ones, without a doubt, and then there's a couple of really funny ones, really humorous ones. And then, there's ones that you can understand how they matter to people, like they were sort of, quite often, a lot of them are milestones,
Yeah,
they really are. But, it's like, it's like a lot of things like this. The whole podcast is very eclectic. Yeah. You never know. We like to have a broad range of guests, but there's no guarantee with every guest that you get on as to that you'll get a set answer. And that's the beauty of it. And this is great why it's worth listening to. And we were talking about it when we were going to do this, and it was very interesting when we went back over them to see the variance in the replies.
Yeah, definitely. I think people enjoy it. Like, it's, so what you're going to hear, folks, is just kind of around 1 minute where we ask the people, we'll introduce the guest, and then you'll hear their kind of 1 minute story of what their most memorable fish on the fly was. And we'll start, I think, with Stan McCart, who we spoke to about successful loch fishing earlier in the season. And he described catching a big brown trout on Rutland.
Memorable fish that I ever caught. I actually caught it on Rutland about, would it be 5-6 years ago? So it was. And it was 8 pound 6 ton. And it was the biggest brown trout was caught in Rutland that year. It was. And that was caught on a size 12 cormorant. That's just size 12 cormorant. That's unbelievable. But I didn't get it the day. If I got it the day of the competition, I'd have been well up to him, but I didn't get it. I got it this day.
But you still remember it. You still remember it. Of course, all the rainbows or the browns in Rutland are only stocked at £1, so they're virtually wild at that stage.
Oh, they're all stocked on Tom.
They're all stocked in, but I know the stocking policy with browns, they only stock them in quite small.
That's right. That's right.
So
they
grow on, don't they?
But I've got 7 pound trout out of Loch Earn, Tom, during the Mayfly. Lovely. Numerous 3 and 4 and 5 pound trout out of Loch Earn.
Next up, then, we had Roy Pearce speaking, and he was talking about the magic of the Mayfly season. Roy is one of my next door neighbours here, and Roy definitely caught me out on his most memorable fish because it involved, of all things, a toilet. But listen on.
A very long-winded and very unlikely story lies behind it. So I'm not sure that we should record it here, but
I think we should.
I think we should. Yeah, sorry.
You should do. Okay. I'll try and be as brief as I possibly can. Growing up in North Kilkenny, on what was then a very prolific small trout stream, there happened to be a timber mill on the side of the river, and the toilet of the timber mill overhung the river, to say the least. But in those days, going back to what we called dibbling, which is the English version of dapping, we used as kids to dap blue bottles underneath the trees and the bushes. But there was this particular trout underneath the tree, and the only way I could get at him was to this was maybe some 10, 12 feet above the river, was to put the rod down through the toilet seat and dibble the blue bottle down below. And I did actually catch it. It was a massive fish. It was 1.25 pounds, which was a huge fish for that river.
Did you catch it through the seat?
That's through the seat of the trouble is, yes.
It was definitely a fish.
But it is the most memorable. Yes.
Memorable in more ways than one.
Yeah, I know, but there you are. You did ask which was most memorable.
We did.
With a bit of toilet roll, it was the fly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
But no, I mean, when you talk of memorable fish, generally people go to size big fish. And I've been very fortunate to catch a couple of very big fish at Corrib through my years, yeah, on fly. I think one particular one that stands out was one that I hooked at Cassidy's Point and landed in Schoolhouse Bay. It was a poorly conditioned fish, but in a good condition, it must have been 16, 17 pounds weight.
Paddy McDonnell, Unlocking the Mysteries of the Moy. Actually, this was one of our most popular episodes this year. And Paddy describes a salmon that he caught guiding for a client on the East Gee. And again, a very kind of poignant story that you'll hear now.
I won't mention this guy's name, right? I won't mention this guy's name. But he was actually quite a famous Scottish salmon angler. And he'd only a few weeks to live, and he was fishing on the River Eastgate, and he caught his last salmon on the sandhole and on Fortland Fishery in the Eastgate, and the fish was 14 pounds weight, and he died 2 weeks later. That was it.
Yeah. God. Yeah.
That was my most memorable fish.
So we spoke to Darren Maguire prior to him captaining Ireland to home international gold on Loch Melvin back in June. Darren's most memorable fish involved a huge battle with the trout on Loch Corrib during the Uachtaráid 50 competition.
My most memorable fish was the 100% the day I won the Uachtaráid on my own. Tom remembers this because I beat him that day, but I was on my own. Well, I'm saying I was on my own. It was a pairs competition, but the guy that was with me was from Cork. He didn't catch any fish for 2 days, but I got a really, really good fish that day. I was out with a Welsh Gate Eye Willie, and I was in a tiny bay. I knew I was going to this wee small bay, and I knew there was a fish in it. One fish, literally one fish. I knew I had a 4-pounder, I had a 5.5, I had a 4-pounder, and I had a 3.5. I wanted one good fish. I says, I know where he's going to be. And I remember talking to Dai Willie saying, I know where I'm going to get him, Dai. Dai was like, thinking I was completely lunatic, like, and I goes, I'm going to him. And I drove like literally for 20 minutes to get into this wee tiny bay. And I knew he was there. I drive into the bay and I look in and he's there. He's going with the tail up, head down. And I goes, right, reeled up, set up the tactics, the whole lot. Row the boat in, exactly as I was telling you earlier with my father. Rowed in, and I was sitting at the side of a weed bed, a tiny wee bit of weeds. It was just a tiny wee bit of weeds. And I just looked and goes, I know when I hook this fish, he's going into the weeds. And I goes, right, get ready, Darns, get ready. So I put on my methods, a certain type of method I was buzzer fishing at the time. So I fire out this full line like that there, but I watched the fish first. And as I was saying to you, when I was 8 years old, the fly was going down, Dad tied the boat. I watched the fish heading away, and as the fish went to the furthest distance away from me, I rode like mad in, got into a position, threw a full line in, got into the exact hole, and I goes, right, the fly's there, ready to rock. Rode the boat back, and I just sat there, a full line away from the fish. Next thing, he was coming. I goes, Dai, I'm going to get him. And next thing, woof, into him. As soon as I hooked him, he went somersault, 4 somersaults. He was 5 pounds. Well, sorry, 4 3/4 he was. And he just went out the lake, and I goes, oh my God. I looked round and he was going straight for a rock. He went straight under the rock, right out under the rock. There was a hole in the bottom of the rock. And I was going, what do I do now? And I said, hold on a second. Just hold him there. So I was sitting playing a rock. The fish was way out here, 30 yards. Eventually I reeled him up. He went back through the rock again, right? Next thing I said, right, I have him now. Definitely have him. What did he do? Run straight for the weed bed that I was talking about. He got all tangled up in the weed bed. I said, no, he's not going to get off. And Di says, oh, he is. He's going to get off there and he's going to break. I says, no, he's not. I rowed the boat back. I pulled the actual weeds up. I dropped the rod, actually, and I pulled the weeds up. The fish ran off with the weeds. I lifted again, and after about probably 40 minutes playing the fish, I got him. And as soon as I got him, I says, if I can't win this competition today, I says, I'm never fishing again, you know. And I got him, and that was it. Like, but I have to say that's the most memorable fish, because it was just an insane bit of things. But actually, when I landed the fish, Di Willie said to me, I actually thought you were going to jump in after him, he says, when he went into the weeds. And I actually thought at one stage, will I jump in? I was that excited about catching this fish. I was jumping around the boat, like. But he was a brilliant fish. But when I came in that evening, you know, and won it, it was because the Uachtarard was something, because Dad had won it with Kevin Curran. It was one I had to win. Like, it was just, I had to win it. And
then we spoke to Eamon Ross reviewing the Mayfly season on Loch Sheelan, and Eamon described to us the fish he didn't catch the day before the All-Ireland semi-final of 1975.
The most memorable fish is the one I didn't catch in 1975 in Loch Gal before Kerry beat us in the football. But I can't count him.
Right.
So
but you'll never forget him.
I'll never forget that. Because it was so big.
Come here, actually, before we move on to the one that you did catch, what size do you reckon was the one in Loch Gal?
Over 5 pound. And I can remember,
wow.
You know, I can remember his fins. You know, they were flared out, and he jumped up in the air, and it's like in slow motion in my head. Now, I might be creating this memory myself, but I'll never forget that. The excitement that I actually seen this. And you know, that only takes 2 seconds. He's up in the air, a couple of seconds, back down again, but it's imprinted in your head forever. And I remember looking at John Martin and wondering why he wasn't continuing to bring him in. He had broken the line and went away with all our flies. But anyway, and Sheelan, I've caught a lot of big trout in Sheelan. I've caught fish with John Murray, a friend of mine from Sligo. He comes up, and we've caught fish over. I reckon that I got one on the nymphs last year. He wasn't double figures. He was as close as it is that it wouldn't make any difference. But the one that I remember is out on my own one time, and it was a lovely summer's evening, getting towards dark, and I was fishing wet flies, and I used to dread flat cams coming, because then I couldn't fish wets. I wouldn't be able to do anything. Like, I couldn't fish nothing after that. So it was calming down towards evening time, and I was fishing up at Derry Sheridan, and the wind was blowing up the lake. So if you can imagine, my boat was drifting up, the shore was on my left, and on my right, up in the top corner of the lake, the sun was just about heading down and shining down the lake, and the wave was dying, and I had a bibio on the top dropper. I hooked a trout on the bibio, and he went up in the air and jumped between me and the sun, and you could see the water flying off him, and there was kind of a rainbow came off him, and I managed to land him. And I never apologize for bringing a fish and killing one and bringing them home. I used to bring them all home that time. But I remember hitting him on the head and saying to myself, well, I'm going to enjoy this fella, and packing up and having such satisfaction, heading over with a trout over 3.5 pound, and to get him in such, you know, in such nice conditions where he jumped, and he jumped a lot, and threw these masses of water up into the sun, and you could see kind of rainbows coming off him. So that's my most memorable trout. Caught in a bibio, probably on a floating line. And I had fished all day, and I got one rise, got him.
You got your one chance, and you took it.
I did, yeah.
Thank God, yeah. And you'll never forget him.
No, I often do remember that one. And I'd said that was in about probably in the late 80s.
We had Jason O'Riordan on speaking about fly fishing for bass on the Copper Coast, and Jason told us of a huge bass that he caught while fishing on the Copper Coast. which was definitely one of his most memorable.
Probably, yeah, it's an unusual one. And actually, Dara, I think you were with me, believe it or not. We were fishing a particular mark and we went in the dark. So we got there in the dark before daylight, partly because I wanted to get a bit of fishing in before anyone else was out of bed and saw this really, like we say, specific spot where we were. And I got a really good fish. And I took him around the corner a little bit away, not to disturb anything and not to be seen. So I had this great idea. I had one of these red LED head torches. And I said, sure, I'll turn on the red light. People won't take any notice if they can see me. And, got out the phone and I measured the fish. And if it was a big fish, I think afterwards it would have been about 12.5 pounds off of the centimeters when I converted it. The picture was a disaster. All I could see was this sort of red spotlight, and you could really see 1/3 of the fish pretty well, where the red beam was, and then the top and the tail and some of the head was quite blurry. Now, look, you could probably make out that it was a big fish, but like, oh my God, what a disaster. But look, anyone who fishes with me probably knows I've no interest in. I only take the pictures. I take them on my phone. I have no proper camera. I've no interest in it. I just want it as a sort of a record, if you like. I need a certain bit of it for social media as a bit of promotion. I don't like holding the fish anymore in the pictures myself, even in the lake. If I was out with Tom, I'd usually say just take a picture of him in the net or on the seat. I went through that phase where I wanted to be holding him, with the arms outstretched in every picture. And look, again, I'll be honest, I went through a phase when I was younger and couldn't catch enough fish. And if I was allowed to keep 6 fish, I'd keep 6 fish. And if they said you could allowed to keep 4 fish, I'd keep 4 fish. But now I don't. It just don't bother. Maybe everybody goes through that phase. Maybe I'm getting old. Really don't like keeping wild fish anymore.
Would that have been your best one, Jason?
I'd say 12 and a half,
And I think probably the most popular episode this year was Joe Crane, who was remembering the glory days of Connemara sea trout. And Joe talks about fishing Loch na Whelan, a big lake with a steel fly rod, when he caught a superb trout on a claret and mallard.
That's a very easy question to answer. And I can describe the day and I can describe the location, Loch na Whelan, one of our mountain lakes, with a steel rod. It could have been an antenna from a bloody, what do we call one of these army yoke
tank,
and a steel rod. It was steel, and it was. I can see the spot on Loch na Whelan, and on a claret and mallard. One of the days of Cork, claret and mallard bought in Mary King's shop in Roundstone, and with Lelion nylon. Lelion was the nylon that we used, and it was a fish of 1.5 pounds, and that was, to me, that was the magic. That was the day that it all started.
Wow, that I actually know na Whelan. I fished na Whelan before. That's a cracking fish for na Whelan.
But Sconliffe is better.
I know that. I know, because and you've told me that, and you sent me there. But that's a good fish for na Whelan. And was that one of your first trout?
That was my first real trout. That was the trout that hooked me. That was the trout that hooked me.
Wow.
That was the hook. That was the fish that destroyed me. And that particular time, there was a huge colony of cormorants on it, and the cormorants never. They can say what they like about cormorants, and I know. Well, as Tommy Thornton in Cornamoona said, the cormorant is bad, but the crane is worse.
I heard that said before, Joe, and that is on record. It's on record. It once uttered in O'Malley's pub in Cornamoona. Yeah?
It is, yeah. Said it.
Tommy Thornton said it. Right, the cormorant is bad, but the crane is worse.
That's what he said, yeah.
Garrett Fallon from Fallon's Quarterly magazine joined us, and his most memorable fish was also another quite poignant one. It involved the capture of quite a large pike.
The most memorable one was the 25-pound pike
I caught at where was this? It was in the Meath Cavan border. I can't remember the name of the lake. It'll come to me. But yeah, it was a January day. It was 2 days before my dad died, and it was a friend of mine, Phil Daly. was working in Navan, and he said to me, "Do you fancy going pike fishing? I got to go down and service this bit of hospital equipment, and then the lake is only up the road when we go there." And I said, "Yeah, great idea." And then he picked me up in the car, and then we got to the end of the road, and it said, "Oh, I forgot my camera. Have you brought yours?" And went, "No, I don't have a camera." I said, "Well, it's a horrible old day, cold January day. We probably won't catch anything anyway." And we went down to this lake, and I waited in the car park while he sorted his work out and drove off. And I was fishing with this Shakespeare strike rod, this old float rod, about 11-foot float rod. It was about as thick as a telegraph pole. It was a massive thing, but it was great for pike fishing because it was very strong. And I'd nicked my dad's Mitchell reel, and I was using that. And I was fishing whole mackerel on a treble and with an tonic, and it was really windy. There was just left to right wind going, and I hoofed this thing out, and the line just got caught. I was aiming for this bit of reeds between a sort of island and the shore where I thought fodder fish might be sort of gathering up and the pike could be in there. But the wind just took the line right out about 25 yards away from where I was casting, and I couldn't get the bobbin on the uptonic to sort of settle, and it was just going beep 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 like that. And my mate was going like, "That's a fish." And I said, "It's not a fish, it's the wind." And there's a huge bow in the line. I said, "It's a fish." And I was, "That's not. Really, it's not." And we went on with this for a minute or so, and I went, "Oh, he went, we just strike the bloody thing." I went, "Okay," and it struck. And the water just went mental, literally where I'd cast. And this huge fish came out of the water, and it was just like, holy moly. And so I struck into it, and the pike took off along the bank. And within about a minute, the drag on the reel broke on my dad's good old, 50-year-old Mitchell reel. So I had to backwind this pike, and then it started absolutely showering down with rain. And it was it wasn't light rain, it wasn't like a soft day rain. It was like lashing with rain, and the kind of stuff that hurts you. And Phil said, "Well, sod this, I'm off to the car," right? And he left me. So I was like, went up and down this thing, and I remember exactly the time because it took me 25 minutes to land it. And just as I was landing it, the rain stopped, and Phil came out, and he netted the fish for me. And we waited, and I think it was 25.4 or 25.6 or whatever. And it was beautiful, biggest pike I'd ever caught. The biggest one I caught for that was about 16. And I said, "Jesus, it's a shame about that camera, wasn't it?" And we were just putting the thing back and going, and the fish, there was a little drop off in the lake, and she just sort of settled off at the bottom of the drop off and sat there for about 5 minutes, kind of looking at us with this kind of funny eye, looking at us a bit unhappy, and kind of saying, "What was all that about?" And then it just, off she went. And with that, we heard this sort of the cattle grid in the car park behind us go, and it was this big 4x4 came in, and this guy came out with this huge camera on his back, and he was there to photograph the birds, and he kind of rocks up and he goes, "You're fishing, are you?" It's just like, this is shite weather. What are you doing? Like, you never kept out. And so I got home that night, and I called my dad, and I told him about it, and he wrote it down on a message, and he went off to dinner that night, and 2 days later we got the phone call that he'd passed away. But when I went home to spend some time with Mum and the funeral and stuff like that, I found the phone message written, and it had £25 pike. Mackerel deadbait, and my friend who he'd seen for dinner had said that how proud he was because that was the biggest fish that a Fallon had ever caught. So the biggest pike that a Fallon had ever caught, should I say. So that's my best fish.
Then one of our first of our fishery focus episodes was with Jason Nash on the River Bandon, and Jason talks about a £4 grilse on water that he'd done work on
And then as well as fishing with his son, Killian, his dad, Joe, and his wife.
7 years ago now at this stage. Like, you know, I like my own job as well as like I'm a fisheries ecologist. So 7 years ago now, Bantanglers, we had this section of the river which we rehabilitated. So what we were doing was these angling pools that had kind of degraded over time for one reason or another. We actually went to enhance them. So the ethos back then was, you know, deflectors and creating pools and putting in lies and stuff like that. So I went away and designed it with the late Professor Martin O'Grady. And yeah, we came up and we like, you know, I was there now with the track machine and kind of like, you know, kind of, you know, supervising the works and kind of showing the machine driver how to do the stuff and things like that. But as soon as we finished anyway, luckily enough, we had a lovely flood, and it was nice to go up there, fish the pools. And in like the first pool I fished, it's a small pot is what we call it. It's just below pothole. And yeah, straight away just started catching salmon like that. So I just found that kind of really satisfying at that, like, you know, that you can actually kind of go away, do some work for the betterment of angling, but more importantly also as well just for the betterment of the river, for improving it. And I just kind of got such satisfaction that, like, you know, only a week before, you know, that we were in there actually doing this really good work, really hands-on work, and then going back there afterwards then and straight away bang, like, you know, getting the fish. So I got great satisfaction with that. And no, it wasn't even a big fish, it was just a nice grilse, I think 4 pounds covered in sea lice of that, like, you know, but it was really satisfying like that, like.
That was class.
Yeah, no, it was really good. And then from another perspective then, I suppose, like, taking my first son, Killian, taking him fishing there now a couple of years ago. We went fishing with my dad, so Grandad Joe, as he'd call him now. And it was one of those days where it was the first flood again for like a month or two, and it was in August, and we were hopeful that, like, you know, fish were there, they were going to be taken. So we got down there and we started fishing. I had Killian, he was only a baby, he was in the sling, and he was oohing and eyeing, and he was loving it and very patient like that, like, you know. So we actually had a nice little bit of time there. I hooked the fish and was trying to be careful then, and, like, you know, not to hit him in the face of the rod, not getting overexcited. And anyway, the fish shook the hook anyway, so I lost him. But then thankfully, my dad then, he hooked another fish and we got him in like that, like, you know. So Alice, my wife, she was with us at that, like, and she was out to photograph the whole moment. And, you know, a photograph of Dad there now, he was bringing the fish in, and I was there kind of stooping down with the net, and there's Killian hanging on with the sling like that, and we're slipping the net underneath the fish. And then we had a nice kind of a photo then with the three of us of that, like, holding the salmon. And I was trying to put the fish back then, but the fish kind of had a bit of a kick then as well. And it unfortunately, but funny, it like slapped Killian across the face as well. Just before I got into the water, he's only a little baby like that, like burst into tears. But it's only, like, you know, looking back at it, like, it's just, you just have to laugh at that, like, you know, it just kind of added to the event. It was very that, like, you know, but it was a really good memory, a really good moment of that, like, you know, that we could all kind of share.
We did an episode on tenkara fishing, and David Anchel joined us to tell us all about it. Really interesting. I actually found that one a very interesting episode. David's most memorable fish, well, he starts off with quite a small catch and then moves on to something very exotic, as you'll hear.
Sticks in my mind is a half-pound trout that I caught 2 days ago in the River Nile. Going up it, I couldn't get any fish to take the fly, and I was spooking them all, and I landed 1 half-pound trout, and I was thoroughly happy. So that's the one that sticks in my mind.
You don't need to be traveling the world then.
That's it.
I think. Let me answer it a bit more sensibly. There was one that stands out in recent years. I went to Tanzania to look for tigerfish, and a 20-pound tigerfish is like the ultimate target. And I landed a 22-pounder there, and it wasn't just the landing of it. I had to cast an awful long way across the river. The fish took the fly. He made an almighty leap, and the guide said, "Oh my God, look at that." So the guide was like excited because it was the biggest fish that he'd seen that year.
Later in the season, we had Peter Driver on Trout River Tactics in September. Now, he talks about a lot of different fishing competitions that he's caught, but really the most memorable fish was one that he and his father kind of caught in a peculiar way in Loch Mass, shall we say. You can have a listen to it.
Size has never been a big thing for me. You know, I think it's, but I can tell you about the 6-inch trout I caught on the Avonmore, or an 18-centimeter trout I caught on the Avonmore with the last cast how valuable was that fish for me that morning? You know, fish or the fish I caught in the tie, fish of a lifetime, changed my whole, you know, it pathed out my whole fishing career. That one fish in a tie, who would have thought it? You know, things like that. So, you know, there's loads of fish there that you could, you know, I was looking about, say, that one in Sweden, or the one to get to Sweden, the one, there was one in a competition again in Cork, myself and Dave Donovan, caught it literally in the first session, but it was the last cast. I might have raced maybe 50 yards to throw that cast, a full cast dry dropper, up into a corner where I knew there had to be one more fish, and made that cast while stumbling at the same time, and hooked that fish and took it to the net, all in a moment like of madness. But that fish won the session for us, and we kicked on to win 404. You know, so there's been a lot of fish, barracuda on the fly in Dominican Republic. Look, I could write a book on fish, but there's one story, and it's very memorable, not just because it was a lovely trout or the conditions we caught it in or whatever, maybe, but it was the time, it was the moment. And that's very important thing to for any people that are out there fishing. No, it's not just about the size of the fish or the catch or the technical ability to catch it, but you know, it's where you are at the time. It's who you're with is very important too, you know. And I can't even remember the year, back in 2004, 2005, I was going through a very changing time in my life, I suppose it would be the best way of describing it. And my dad had just had a triple bypass, and you know, things were changing, stars were aligning, but I wasn't aware at the time where the stars were aligning me towards. Looking back now, I can see, that's why that happened, that's why I am. But at the time, it was very confusing and things like that. Things were up in the air an awful lot in every aspect of my life. But anyway, Dad was starting to recover a bit, and he wanted to go away, get the hell away for a few days. So I said, you know, this is June or July, I think it was at the time. And I said, look, let's go to the west. Let's go to the west. Dad loves the coral, and let's go to the west. Nice weather. He was strong enough to go, and we just go for 2 days, 3 days, and just chill out and get away from everything. And he agreed anyway. So we went over and we stayed in Kong. We fished the Corrib the first day. Got a suntan, was about all we got. Flat cam, not a trout to be seen. We were the only people on the whole Corrib, I'd say, sitting out there. But we sat out in the boat, and we had our tea and sandwiches, and we drank and turned off the phone. It was a lovely day. Stayed in Kong that night, took a walk around the village, got some dinner, and went back. And we were on the mast the next day. Never fished mast before in my life, nor Dad. And we were boating it as well. So got up the morning and went out mast, flat cam, not a riffle on it. Sun, 20-something degrees, bright sunshine. There was a couple of other loony souls that went out that same day. I don't know where we actually went out of now. I couldn't even tell you, Tom. But went out, we hired a boat and went out anyway. But we didn't get them. We were going out for a drive. We're going to drive around and see Loch Mast. And so fished away here and there. So Dad says, here, pull in there. That's a nice looking island. We'll have a cup of tea. So we pulled in, we got out the Kelly kettle, made the tea, and sat and had sandwiches and talked. And here, come on. He says, we'll get up and go back in the boat. We'll go for another drive. So we might spot an out trout somewhere, you know. So got into the boat. Put the boat in reverse, start reversing back. Dad pushes out a little bit, got the oar, put it into the water, pushes out, turn the engine on reverse, start reversing out, and spun the boat around. And at the same time, Dad said, oh, look, there's a little bit of a riffle over there, he said, looking in distance, you know, it's like a mirage on desert of water, you know, you see this little riffle, get over there quick, there's a wave. And so anyway, we put on the engine and start motoring away. And next thing, I said, Jesus, look behind you. He says, there's a trout behind you. And I said, what? He said, there's a trout rising behind you. Stop the engine quick. So I stopped in, looked back, and lo and behold, there was rings of a trout right after rising. So I grabbed the rod, stripped the rod as fast as I could, in panic to cover the fish anyway, and a couple of pulls across it, no, nothing. And next thing he came up again. Jesus, there he is again, Dad. Dad says, there he is again. And I stripped back in and covered the fish again, 2 yards to the right or 2 yards to the left, whatever it was, and tried it again. And next thing the fish came up for a third time, and I looked at him and I said, that's not right. What the hell is going on there? I said, that trout's not rising. Something's wrong. And next thing I said, I think he's floating on the surface. So I said, geez, drive over. So I drove the boat over anyway and pulled up alongside this lovely big 3.5 pound brown trout, beautiful big bar of gold. And here's a man floating up at the top of the lake with the mark of the propeller in the back of his head. Where we ran over him coming out of the lake, the island, ran over the trout, and put the net under and put the trout into the bag. And that's the handiest trout we'll ever get. But now, we came back in off the lake. Now, this is true. I'm just telling the story, and you can put the story out. And my dad will back me up 100% of it. There's even a few men on mast that back it up if I knew who they were. But coming back in off the lake anyway, and we pulled up at the shore, and geez, we were delighted ourselves with our trout in there. And he wasn't going back, unfortunately. We would have tried to put him back, but he was dead as a duck. But anyway, arrived in and there was the other lads were coming in off the lake. There was a couple of other lads out for a drive. Nah, didn't even see a trout. Dad took out this big proud trout anyway, proud as a bunch. And geez, what you get him on? I got him on the propeller fly. So we often meant to design a fly pattern and call it the propeller fly. But the boys couldn't believe, geez, what's that fly? That's a top secret pattern of us Wicklow boys and down for ages in the car park. Such a crack we had. But you know what a memorable fish. It wasn't even just that it was a lovely trout or there's a whole story about it. The fact I was there with my dad, you know, on that weekend, we had a lovely weekend that weekend. And that's what fishing's all about too. It's not just about the competitions or the medals. That stuff is all great. But for me, it's the memories, it's the stories we have, it's the companionship we have with our fellow anglers and things like that. So, you know, it leads us to great places at times, fly fishing, whacking wonderful. But that was my most, I debated about all week. What's my most memorable fish? What's the one story I'd have, not just that stands out from the rest, like they're all fabulous trout, like, but you know, one most memorable was that one, not just because of the trout, but, or the story that we ran him over on.
You'll have to tie that fly during the.
I will, yeah. I'll have to come up with a propeller fly, yeah. I've often thought about trying to come up with some kind of a call it propeller fly.
Our thanks to all of our guests for joining us on the show this year. And stay tuned for a second volume of Most Memorable Fish on the Fly stories sometime in 2023. We hope you all have a peaceful and happy new year, and we'll be back out on the water again soon and start putting some of those fly fishing resolutions into action as well.
Don't forget to rate, review, and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram. And myself and Tom will be back in the new year in 2023 with the first episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.